Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, I'm Natalie Moore of WBEZ, and welcome to the first in a series of conversations with Illinois nonprofits, taking an in-depth look at how organizations are adapting and changing due to the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, in this panel discussion, we are looking at how key social safety net organizations are working together to ensure a more equitable future for Illinois after the crisis is over. I'm pleased to introduce today's panel, which includes Jennifer Welch, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Illinois, Erin Walton, Executive Director of Resilience, Karina Ayala Baremo, President and CEO of Instituto del Progresso Latino, and Alexa James, Executive Director of NAMI Chicago. I will give each panel member a brief introduction before asking specific questions about how each organization is responding to the COVID-19 crisis. We will end with a brief Q&A. If you have questions, please email them to questions@ppil.org. Again, that's questions@ppil.org. At any point during the conversation, you can send an email, and we will select a few for our panelists to answer live at the end. Here's a closer look at our panelists. Before coming to Planned Parenthood, Jennifer Welch was first Deputy Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services. Previously, she served as Policy Director for Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan. Resilience Executive Director, Erin Walton, previously served as the Development Director at Chicago Child Care Society, where she worked and implemented fundraising strategies. In addition to her organizational work, Erin consults with other nonprofit organizations in the areas of strategic planning and quality improvement. President and CEO of Instituto del Progresso Latino, Karina Ayala Baremo, previously served as General Counsel and Executive Vice President and the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of Metropolitan Family Services. Prior to that, she worked for the City of Chicago in Mayor Daley's administration as Acting Commissioner, First Deputy Commissioner, and Managing Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources. Alexa James is Executive Director at NAMI Chicago, a leading voice in the conversation around mental wellness, challenges of the mental health system, and mental health education in Chicago and beyond. Alexa has represented NAMI Chicago on the Police Accountability Task Force under Mayor Rahm Emanuel and the Health and Human Services Transition Committee under Mayor Lori Lightfoot. So we can't applaud for them, but you can applaud in your home or on your device. And just a reminder that if you have questions for the panelists, please email them to questions@ppil.org. So let's get started. The first question is, really, how has your organization responded to the COVID-19 crisis? And we can start with you, Alexa.
Sure. Thanks, Natalie. And it's such a pleasure to be with beautiful, strong, smart women who are also fighting this fight in leadership during this wild time. So to give some context, NAMI Chicago is an organization that identifies gaps in people's lives or families' lives, caregivers, and tries to fill them with resources that encourage wellness. And here's what we know about mental health, that recovery is possible, that people do better, that people can live a very high functioning life, a very fruitful life, living with a mental health condition or emotional distress. But what we know is that the locus of mental health recovery, how the way that we heal, is not just in a treatment facility or not just with a clinician or not just with medication, that folks need community, a sense of purpose, stable housing. All of those things have been stripped from people's lives immediately with COVID-19. So when individuals call our helpline, which is 7 days a week, they are now calling about much more fundamental basic needs: housing, food insecurity, coaching about how do you live with somebody that you may feel unsafe with, that you are now stuck with, right? And so this isn't, our call volume has increased 266% since COVID, which is incredible. And the fact that we've been able to mobilize and answer all of those calls and they're not going to voicemail and we're connecting people is huge. But we're housing people. I mean, we are putting people in hotels and paying for housing for folks. We are partnering with organizations like Lakeview Pantry and other. We're developing partnerships that typically we hadn't needed before, right? And so we've mobilized to start fulfilling people's basic needs. And then we're following up about how this trauma has impacted their emotional health. So we've continued to gap fill, but in a much more basic needs way. And I think social services, and I'm sure you'll hear this from my colleagues, that we have really stepped in to support a safety net that was already pretty fragile in our city and in our state and nationally, and have together in partnership begun to try to kind of weave in services to support our community.
Natalie, I have to say, Planned Parenthood has also responded to the pandemic in a number of different ways. And we recognize that it impacts different people in different ways at different times. And so since the very beginning, my team and I have taken measures really quickly to ensure the safety of our staff, our patients, and the communities that we serve. And we have really tried to be proactive and to build resiliency, head nod to Erin there, and be compassionate in our approach. For a lot of the kind of leader who has contingency plans and continuity plans for a number of scenarios, but unquestionably, there was no way to prepare for this. And the fast moving and unknown variables of the COVID-19 outbreak presented just a whole unprecedented challenge. So for us, we really kind of leaned into two things. First, keeping an eye on our mission and our core values to help more patients in this crisis, but keep an eye on long-term sustainability, because we have to be here for folks even after this crisis passes. And in the reproductive health world, there are another crisis that we can see coming down the line. So we really have to keep a short range and a long range in view. And then we're really about providing and protecting the essential services and access to the most time-sensitive reproductive and sexual health care as part of that social and medical health safety net that Alexa referenced. So what we did really concretely at Planned Parenthood is we consolidated 17 health centers temporarily into 6 centers. But then we also expanded the days and the hours that those fewer centers were open. And when we made that consolidation, we really thought about the demographics of the communities that we were serving, and we wanted to make sure that we still had a distribution of services across the state. And the last thing that we did is we implemented a team-based approach so that we have longer work days, but fewer people at a health center. We're really trying to support social distancing while still providing the most essential care. So it's kind of an overview for Planned Parenthood.
At Instituto, we are no stranger to crisis, but as Jennifer pointed out, this COVID-19 is larger than any contingency plan. For Instituto, we've been a beacon of hope in our community for over 43 years, and we firmly believe that every immigrant and their families, they deserve the ability to reach their full potential, and we do that through education, training, and employment. But these times have been very different. We've also taken an approach at really listening to what our participants have requested, and it's basic needs. To give you an idea of our population, the average income of our participants at intake is $19,100. So we were already faced with a participant base that works entirely on hourly pay and paycheck to paycheck. And we're really trying to move our participants from survival jobs into careers. So Carreras en Salud program that trains healthcare workers specifically into future nurses. So we're as frontline as it gets. And during these times, we've really been able to reconnect with our participants in a different way to meet basic needs. So we wanted to really understand how versus being reactionary, which we had to in the beginning. We surveyed our participants, and this is what they shared with us. 60% report an income loss. 40% are not working at all. 30.3%, Alexa, to your point, are struggling with stress and anxiety. And that's really telling from a community that has such a huge stigma against mental health. The mental health problem was bigger and telling more than we expected. And 14.5, almost 15% are essential workers. So for us, it's a shift of being responsive to this need that's newer for us, but also aware that the barriers that once existed are now magnified. So transportation and childcare, food, also dealing with roof overhead situations when intergenerational families live under one roof, and a one missed paycheck could mean a out in the street situation. So for us, COVID has been a triage approach at addressing basic needs, but it's been a priority, like Jennifer and Alexa have stated, to ensure that our participants and our employees are safe. So for example, when we announced we have food distributions, which we've been doing daily since the stay-at-home order, we will get lines out the door. Just last week, when we passed out medical face masks, we had over 400 participants show up in a very short time frame. We have to be spatially distant while still being very supportive and being distribution centers to provide that need that our participants are facing.
Again, my name is Erin Walton, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this panel discussion. At Resilience, our priority is to empower survivors, and our vision is to end sexual violence. And so the core of what we do and who we are is provide medical and legal and crisis intervention services to survivors of sexual violence. We meet the majority of our clients in the ER at 17 hospitals across the city of Chicago. And on an annual basis, we serve approximately 2,000 survivors every year. From the survivors that we meet in the ER, about 65% of them continue on to some of our additional services, which include therapeutic services and legal advocacy. And so, as you might imagine, most of our clients are, although sexual violence does not end in a crisis, and statistically we believe and know that the numbers actually increase during times of stress and trauma. And so many of our families are stuck, in a stay-at-home or under a stay-at-home order in households where they may not feel safe. That's adults as well as children. But at the same time, so many people might be fearing right now entering hospital spaces. So contrary to some of the responses some of my colleagues are receiving, our numbers are going down a bit and we believe that is because people are just truly fearful of being inside of the ER spaces at this time. And so we're working diligently with partners like Planned Parenthood to ensure that survivors know that there are alternative options other than hospitals if they're not feeling safe at this time. That many of our community clinics provide much, if not all, of the same services that they might receive in a hospital setting. And so we are trying to get the message out through all of our communication means to ensure that those we currently work with and those we prospectively might work with know that they have other options. As I mentioned, many of our clients also receive therapeutic services from us as well. And so we've shifted the way we do business with them. Primarily that's been an in-person communication where they come into our office spaces on a weekly basis, I should say. And all of our services to them are free of charge. And so we've extended that during this COVID time to be via phone or either via teleconference or video conferencing. However, even in that instance, we're finding that many of our clients are not in spaces where they feel comfortable to engage in those services. They might be in a home setting where they physically feel safe, but may not want to but maybe they don't have the privacy in that home to have these candid and private conversations. So we struggle with that. We struggle with some of our clients not having the economic resources for video conferencing and things like that. But also we know that, although the trauma is real and is probably intensified during this time, it's not the primary topic of conversation for these folks. Our families and clients need additional supports in other ways because COVID has challenged us in so many different areas of our lives, whether it's loss of income or someone at home might be ill. And so the conversations, although we continue to engage with our clients, the conversations at this time are shifting from being trauma focused around the sexual harm that they received to really helping them cope during this time.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to note that we are looking at Erin, but we're hearing her from the phone. So this is technology in a new day and trying to convene people together. So we just heard about how you are adjusting to the people you serve, but how are you taking care of your employees during this time?
I think that we probably all agree that we are in the service industry and we cannot take care of people if we are not well ourselves. We are of no service to anybody if we are not well ourselves. And so mental wellness of my employees has always been our biggest priority for our programs. So figuring out how to support individuals who we have really drastically mobilized and isolated has been a really good learning opportunity of freedoms and powerlessness. We are an organization that often say whenever there's an adjustment, whether it's hourly or program or policy or anything, partnership, how do you feel about this? From leadership to mid-management to entry-level staff. How does this feel for you? Does this feel good? Does this feel like we're hitting our core mission? Well, we didn't do that. We said on Tuesday, you're all going to be at home. And we yanked freedom. Now, it was the safest thing to do. We are complying with what was going on, but I have to understand that the trauma that incurred, that there are challenges to working remotely and there are opportunities. For some people, this is incredibly validating. They would prefer to be alone. They felt isolated. We just actually completed a wellness survey of our employees, moving from what a lot of the women had said before, moving from this triage to like long-term. I mean, the likelihood of us going back to work like we did soon is unlikely. And some folks are going to feel more comfortable staying at home for a significant period of time based on their age or health condition or emotional distress around reentry. So we did an assessment. We found out from a physical, environmental, and emotional health perspective how people are feeling, what they need for equipment, what they need for emotional support. We have offered all of our employees free mental health sessions virtually with a partner organization that we are paying for. Certainly everyone here has insurance, but it's nice to just not have to go through the burdensome challenge of finding a clinician at this point. Supervision has been challenging, of course, to meet the needs of what folks are feeling, particularly because our helpline has increased so significantly and there are a lot of people in crisis. So we have increased supervision and check-ins. But we learned a lot from our survey, and we learned a lot about what the needs are, and we learned a lot about how important it is to be heard and how important it is for us to modify our work schedule around what feels most comfortable for folks, also offering free childcare if that's comfortable, and basically, honoring that these are healthcare workers that are necessary in this space, but will require some more financial and emotional support. Those are some of the things we've done.
Alexa, those are some great recommendations for us to follow. We have established some of those things, but not all of those things. We have reached out to our staff. We have actually a self-care committee that's been an ongoing committee with the organization for several years, and that committee has been charged with, kind of assessing the pulse of their peers to learn more about what our staff really wants and needs from us at this time. we certainly, in addition to that, have made it clear to our teams that they're to work at a pace and that feels most comfortable and supportive for them, so that people have adjusted work schedules, adjusted work times. Not everybody's role is going to, it's not going to be realistic for us to expect everybody to work a 40-hour work week during this time, and we've assured our staff that that's okay and that we support them to manage their lives the way that they need to manage their lives and their time. And so we meet frequently with staff around, happy hours and coffee breaks and things like that to just kind of have social check-ins. To Alexa's point, supervision does not look the same right now, but there are regular check-ins on every level, minimally on a weekly basis, to ensure that teams and have that one-on-one connection as well as team connection throughout this process. We don't anticipate, similarly, us being able to just jump back into a work environment immediately. And so we're continuing to challenge ourselves to think about how we can better support our staff while they support the overall community.
Getting so many good ideas from everybody here. Do you see me taking notes? Like, we got to try that. So, a lot of similar responses. I will say that I'm really proud that Planned Parenthood of Illinois created a special paid leave program well before the government acted, because we knew that there were going to be good reasons why some of our team members couldn't come to their health center as previously scheduled. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to tend to our team as well as our patients during this pandemic. And like everything else, we know that COVID is going to exacerbate existing inequalities. We do want everybody to be able to telecommute if their job allows for that, but we acknowledge that not everybody has the same access to broadband and Wi-Fi. And so and that goes for our patients as well. So we're trying to acknowledge the reality of the situation and work to minimize the challenges that our colleagues are facing. I am, as a leader, trying to be really transparent and flexible with our team of employees. For the first number of weeks, that meant that they got a daily email from me that was a sort of a wrap-up email, and really frequent phone calls and video calls, and just any way that I can try to help our team members be confident that we're going to get through this together. And like Alexa said, we know that our caretakers need taking care of too. So we took a number of extra steps to support the team and share self-care resources. We're really lucky actually to partner with NAMI, and their amazing virtual support group for healthcare workers has been important to our team. And next week, we're doing a whole week of a self-care focus with our internal behavioral health team that usually specializes in serving our patients. They're going to turn around and really focus on serving their colleagues next week. And that includes actual office hours at their health centers in a socially distant way. However, we're going to work that out, and offering short appointments or longer relationships, depending on what their colleagues want and need, maybe to be a bridge to care or just to talk about these constantly evolving changes in our world, in our home, and in our workplaces. So a lot of themes emerging here.
I'm really learning a great deal about how I could leverage some of these coffee hours and social hours. Instituto is really deep in a culture of familia, a really family-centered approach to everything that we do. So being together and having that community on a day-to-day basis has been a void. And while we've attempted to do everything via Zoom, there's some Zoom fatigue already experienced by individuals with so much technology. There's a need to connect in a different way. So as we balance that leadership and really modeling what self-care looks like, that's been critical. Instituto was fortunate to have launched a wellness initiative prior to COVID, so that we're checking up on things, not just work-related, but how is that 3-mile run? How is that meditation program going? So that we're connecting on a really human level. The digital divide issue not only exists with our participants, but with our employees. So ensuring that they have the devices and the resources they need to continue the great work has really been important. Our participants and our staff have been front center with regards to ensuring that the dialogue continues, and you can't do it if you don't have that internet connection. So we've been working through some of that for our participants. We know that our staff is comforted when they're able to connect with their employees, and when you don't have the resources or capacity to do so, it's not so comforting. And being really real about the emotional distress that our staff is under, and taking measures to really talk about that openly and address it. We are hopeful that this process will bring us more connected, or bring us together in a connected, deeper way, because it really is about understanding that with every staff member, you have e-learning going on at home. You have the stressors of family who may be undocumented or DACA related with mixed immigration status, that the pressures that are not work related are so magnified during this time that it really is bringing us together in a deeper way. And I think we're back to Natalie.
I was just trying to unmute myself. I just want to remind the audience if they have any questions to email them at questions@ppil.org. Again, that's questions@ppil.org. The work that you all do, you didn't need a pandemic to illustrate the cracks that are in the system. But I am wondering, are there any key lessons that have been learned thus far that will help your organization move forward? And along with that, how to move forward to build a more equitable future for Illinois? And start with you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Natalie. So we are definitely identifying learnings from this. I have a file that lives on the background of my computer, and it's the learnings that I want to take forward. And whether that's just that more people can telecommute. Like, we learned that pretty quickly, right? Jobs that we thought, no, it really had to be here in the office, maybe not so much. And just a lot of innovations that we were able to prioritize critical needs, to modify protocols, put some time-sensitive projects on the back burner, and we were able to do that in days. And let's be real, those things would have all taken a lot longer in a pre-pandemic time. And so we were reminded by this. What we learned from it is that we can be really nimble and flexible and innovative. And we knew it, but this reminded us just how fast we can move. And so that was one learning that we're taking forward. On the equity side, I'm really fortunate that equity is a core value at Planned Parenthood, has been, always will be, and we have been trying to attend to that. It's a very intentional focus, and specifically around racial equity, because when you work with healthcare and vulnerable populations, you have to attend to the intersecting factors that lead to health, wealth, education, access, and other disparities. So we have been attending to that, and that's why I'm fortunate to have such great partners in this. And one of the things that we're doing is partnering with other social impact and healthcare and nonprofit organizations across the state to really put a plea into the state of Illinois. I think Karina talked about it a moment earlier, that a lot of people in the social services network were already struggling. We were struggling because the federal government has been cutting funds. We were struggling because so many of us were still recovering from the budget crisis of the Rauner administration. Things had just started to look more promising when this crisis hit. And so we're really asking the state to make sure that it's attending to vulnerable populations on top of this work, this amazing work that the governor's been doing about the pandemic, that they have to keep safety net healthcare and social service funding intact. and help support all of our programs continue to address the inequalities that we know exist in our state and in our communities.
I couldn't agree with you more. My biggest concern is this equity issue. Just look at the communities hardest hit by COVID-19, and you could begin to see that our Black and Brown communities are suffering the most. It is nothing new, but it's magnified that the underfunded communities and under-resourced organizations continue to suffer. I think for me, it's going to take this, this could be the catalyst to really have these courageous conversations about what's really needed to move us forward and break the cycle of poverty within our communities. There is a disparity that's existed prior, it's magnified now, and it's an important opportunity, right? COVID is not just a thorn, it has a rose and a bud. And it's our opportunity to really seize that moment and forge partnerships like many of us have. We're fortunate, just this week, we're launching childcare in partnership with YMCA at Instituto. It's going to allow us to ensure that our essential workers, who are our participants, can work without the worry. Our community in Little Village in Pilsen does not have the luxury of staying at home. They're comprised of essential workers who are janitors, who are in the healthcare industry, who are preparing food and need to be able to work without that worry. So this COVID situation has really allowed us to be innovative, to think beyond what our normal service line of services would be, to expand into this area of providing childcare for essential workers. And I'm sure that we'll be partnering with NAMI very soon to address the very recognizable mental illness impact that COVID has had not only on our participants, but our staff. And looking forward, I see a very strong Instituto working closely with the partners that are aligned with this mission of really ensuring that we break the cycle of poverty and are equitable in the lens of healthcare and beyond.
I echo all of what's been said so far. I think that one of the key lessons for us, to Jennifer's point, is the fact that we can be as flexible and and as nimble as we have been. We would not have anticipated the capacity to do that in the past, and in very short order, our staff, changed from being, fully in the office or in the community to being home, and have had to make some major adjustments in how we do our marketing and communications with our community, so that they know that there's a new but sustained way in which we're continue to engage with them. So that's a big lesson for us. And I think Jennifer also may have mentioned that we, would not have anticipated the ability to be flexible and working from home. On occasion, once a week or so for us, people were allowed to do that, but certainly we wouldn't have anticipated the ability to do that long term. And so for us, we're thinking now about how does this transition into the future, and is there a way that we can take this work more mobile than we had originally thought or anticipated. So that's a big key takeaway from this time for us. As far as the issue of inequity, I think that that crisis is ever present in our communities, and we are consistently communicating with our stakeholders, particularly our clients, to find out what they need and what they want. We really do feel that individuals, as part of our core value, we believe that individuals are the best teachers for what they need, the best leaders for what they need. And so we make it a practice every day to follow the lead of our community and those that we serve, and provide the resources where we can to help them, throughout their particular experiences. So it's an ongoing conversation for us. We certainly look to partner and continue to partner with other community organizations. We have a deep presence in, for example, the Austin community, in which we continue to invest more of our time and resources to better understand how we can be more of a presence in that community, and how we can ensure that they know that support for things like, sexual harm is available to them. Most often, communities that are disparate, whether it's ethnically or LGBTQ, those communities often don't realize the resources that are available, and so we are continuing to expand our presence and reach to make sure that we are addressing the issue in inequity throughout the populations that we serve. But it's ongoing.
Do you ever have those moments when you've watched something, or you've left a panel or a gala and you're so anxious about an issue, and then you look at leaders and you think, oh my God, I can sleep tonight because people are fighting so hard for this population? That's how I feel right now. And I hope people feel validated by the hard work that is being done in the city and the state by such incredible people who always have the lens of equity. I agree, and so I won't repeat what has the important stuff around policy and programs that have been said. But I will say this, for us, what has changed is how are you a leader during this time? That's what I'm challenged with the highest expectations of your employees, and be thoughtful about the fact that, as Karina said, there is no single focus anymore. There's no luxury of single focus. There's not I just have to worry about my kids and then work is my respite. We are layering the stressors that we feel all the time. And so we're working in a space where we're at baseline anxious and a little bit disorganized. And how do you mobilize a workforce in that way, in a way that's sustainable? And so that's something that I'm thinking about from this perspective, but also feeling incredibly validated that we have fought advocates in this space generally to make mental health an issue of equity from a healthcare perspective. And driving to the office today, there were 3 commercials on a random radio talking about how this is impacting our mental health. This is all of us. We are all peers. I'm sure we've all on this call had days or hours of moments where we cannot lead. We cannot do this. And that's where we have to be transparent, right? That's where as leaders we have to say, yeah, this is really hard. It's hard for me to get out of bed. I'm having feelings about my children that don't feel like my parenting values. This is super stressful. And so for me, thinking about equity from the mental health perspective, how do we continue to push our state legislators and our city leaders who have prioritized mental health during this time, who have mobilized really quickly to think about how are we reimbursing for mental health services through telehealth, et cetera, and not let that go away? Because that should have been, because what this experience has really done, and we've all said this in different ways, is highlighted the gaps in our system in a significant way. One last anecdote is when we are managing and supporting individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis, using the emergency department is not really that much of an option anymore. So how, and it shouldn't be anyways, it's a safe place where they can do assessments, but it's a traumatizing experience for somebody who's who's in mental health distress. So how is this going to allow us to be more innovative, to utilize other space, other safety plans, other resources to support people in a way that is less expensive, less traumatizing, and really more treatment connected?
One question that came in is, do any of you have any advice to give to other nonprofit leaders? And we can start with you, Erin. Oh, Erin, you need to unmute. Thank you. Erin, we still can't hear you.
I can jump in, Natalie. I think it's important more than ever to find your tribe. this has been so refreshing for me and validating, as Alexis stated, that as leaders, we all have vulnerabilities. And when we share them with our tribe, with our crew, we feel more empowered and inspired to continue the important work that we knew was going to be challenging, and now more than ever. The advice I'd give other nonprofits in general is to use this opportunity to leverage new relationships, to think out of the normal, ordinary, old work. We can't return to that old work post-COVID-19. It isn't going to be a space that will require, or it is a space that will require this innovative thought and building bridges beyond our comfort zone. And that's exciting. The ability to, from one day to the next, go to a remote situation and to know that you accomplished that your entire team was able to jump onto, whether it's Microsoft Teams or whether it was Zoom, and previously were very perhaps uncomfortable. And then the knowledge that you're gaining, that your team is more dedicated than ever and more inspired and motivated than ever. And that itself requires pause and reflection that you have the right team in place. So the advice is allow yourself to be courageous, because it will require that courageous leadership to try new partnerships and new things during this time.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Erin.
Okay. Well, I'm glad Karina went first, because, I couldn't have said that better. Those were exactly my sentiments and thoughts, to be first, to be generous and kind with yourself. I mean, we're individuals as well, and we're struggling with our own, family dynamics and community dynamics. And so you have to acknowledge that while you're a leader, you're also an individual. And so don't forget to take care of yourself during this time. But, one of the opportunities that we have now is to really think as creatively as possible. This is a time where, you have a little bit more capacity to do that people are going to be a little bit more generous with you as you navigate new ideas. And so find a community on your team, and find a community with other leaders across other organizations to brainstorm and think about how you can do your work differently moving forward. To everybody's point today, there is no going back to tomorrow. We will be navigating differently moving forward. And so to find, partners and colleagues in which you can expand the way you think creatively, and how you provide your services to your community, I think ultimately we're going to have some long-term positive successes because of it.
One more thing, then I just have to echo everything my fabulous colleagues have said about being honest and help normalize that this is not a normal time. Like I keep telling my colleagues, this is not business as usual. And to Erin's point, it will never again be business like we used to do it. Like that's done. We're moving to a new phase, and everybody's sort of in that place. And I think that that's really helpful. But the other thing that I will add is I spend a lot of time being really grateful with my team and just verbalizing that all the time. So when my senior leadership team and I got together yesterday, one of our colleagues said, okay, where are you finding the humor in all of this? Of course, it's a drastically, a tragic situation, but still we know that humor is an important coping mechanism. And tell us what you found. And the mayor memes are really popular. There's so many great creatives are reacting to this in ways that are helpful for all of our mental health. And that's really important. But so I would just say that I am so grateful to the teams that I have the privilege of leading. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. I know we're all sort of trying to roll forward and respond to this crisis, and then the next angle of the crisis, and the next angle of the crisis is take the time to step back and say, wow, great job, everybody. I cannot believe how much we have accomplished. and that we are all going to take these skills and cohesiveness forward to the next phase of our organizations and of our partnerships together.
I would just say, just remember, you guys, as for other nonprofits and other supervisors, whoever, you have the opportunity every single day to heal people near you. So what Jennifer is saying is what we would say in the mental health space is that it's called dosing. That if you are consistent with people, if you praise them, if you give them love, and if you are relatable, and if they believe you, which is important, which is why you have to have that trust before crisis happens, people look at you as a leader or whoever and say, okay, it's hard, and they're being transparent, but they got this, and they're looking out for me, and they notice me. I mean, I think the fact that Karina said, I asked how my employee's 3-mile run was. That demonstrates that, like, I'm really leaning in and I'm noticing you as a human. Those things are healing. So we all are going to have a pretty significant job to do in terms of healing this community that is saturated right now with grief. And these are the workforce, and the workplace is such an important center for that healing to occur.
And final question before we wrap up is, what gives you hope? And Karina, would you mind starting?
Sure thing. The heroic and courageous leadership that I've seen from Instituto's team gives me great hope that our potential is limitless, just like our students and our participants' potential is limitless, that there's nothing that we can't do together. It gives me such pride to see where we've grown so much over the last 40 days, not just with technology and process improvements and really turning over 2 high schools to fully remote learning ahead of the curve, and really just connecting with participants at a really understand it's a stronger organization in the future. I'm hopeful that the true impact of our work breaks the cycle of poverty finally, with this equity lens and focus that the entire state is having.
Like Karina, my team gives me hope. The people that I have the privilege to work with are the core of everything that Planned Parenthood does, whether they're the people who, like Karina said, in one day turned into telecommuters, or they're the people who have continued to show up day after day to serve our patients, whether it's in person or through telehealth, which we also developed during this time. So first, our team gives me hope. And then second, our supporters give me hope. And we're struggling to stay in touch with our supporters at this challenging time, but they're the reason why we can still care for patients and why we can still work to protect access to reproductive and sexual health. We want all of our supporters to know how crucial they are to this moment and this movement. So those are the 2 groups giving me hope right now.
Yeah, I too would say that I've always known that we've had a very strong, passionate, extremely passionate group of people that have great ideas and that are committed to this work. But this moment has really shined a light on what that really looks like and means for our team. Every day, someone is asking, what else can I do? Every day, someone is asking, bringing forth new ideas on how we can serve our clients in a different way. Despite personal life situations, our team is committed to prioritizing the needs of our community, specifically survivors of sexual violence, but overall, understanding that we're all connected in this moment. And so that really does bring me a lot of hope to know that I'm surrounded by a team that's really lifting me up personally and professionally in this moment. And I am convinced that, because of creative people that I work with, that we will not only ride this wave, but that we will triumph on the other side, and that the communities that we serve and those that we partner with will feel even more supported by the work that we do.
Before this crisis, my honest moment is that I was starting to really feel as though as a society, as a community, we had lost empathy for each other. We are so focused and so overburdened and so stressed. This has changed that for me. This has showed me so much hope. People who are calling our helpline now are asking how my call takers are doing. It's never happened before. We talk a lot about shared lived experience, that our teachers should be the people who are living the experience, particularly from a mental health, place. It's all of us. So we are having this communal compassion and empathy that is so beautiful, that social service partners, that private partners, that corporate partners, people are not coming from a place of no. I'm not saying like the money's rolling in, we all could, use more money, but I'm saying people are not coming from a place of no right now. We are so hungry for connection and so hungry to be a part of the solution, and how grateful we all are that we get to have a tiny piece of that power, in working every day to be helpful in this arena. Not everyone has that privilege. That gives me hope. So I feel really comforted by the fact that we have shared this lived experience. My concern is, not to be a Debbie Downer, my concern is that once this changes, there's going to be some of this like comparative suffering. And I worry for that, because somebody's always going to have it worse than us. I'm a white woman with a privilege who has felt like I've lost my freedoms. What do I know about freedoms, But we have to think about that. Our grief is our grief, our loss is our loss, and continue to show up for people in that way, so we can continue this like amazing connection that is happening for the first time where we're physically most disconnected.
Really quickly, I wonder, I thought about the empathy, but I also wonder if people will forget that empathy once things, I know it won't be normal. Life's never going to be like March 13th, but how to keep that empathy going when you're trying to make institutional change around equity and structures. Has anyone thought about that?
We have to keep storytelling. We have to keep storytelling successes, resiliency, trauma, outcome. We have to be very, very loud about the inequities. We have to leverage people who are directly experiencing this to feel safe and comfortable through these organizations, to share that experience in a way that feels safe for them. We cannot forget what has happened. This is an international trauma. So I think we have to keep storytelling and hearing from those people directly impacted.
And not forget where the light on the issues are truly shining at this moment in time. For us, the acknowledgement of only 5% of the Latino RNs reflected in population in the state of Illinois is not acceptable. We need it to be more reflective of the healthcare industry at large, and as an institution that trains nurses and CNNs at a very high level of success rate. We hope that that message doesn't disappear either, that the importance of the work that we do is greater, now more than ever, but will be for years to come.
And Natalie, I'm sorry, I hope people remember the disparities that were magnified during this crisis. We all work in the social impact world, so we knew them, but I think some people have been surprised by them. And I hope everybody remembers the inequality of the care and of the damage that this pandemic has done, and remember that when we respond in the future.
It is my hope that because we've all been impacted, there is not anyone that has not been touched by this in some way, that will help continue to create the storytelling that Alexa talked about, so that this will continue to be top of mind for us as we navigate a new path. Oftentimes, different crises or issues come to surface that people might feel a sense of disconnection to, or they might feel a certain amount of empathy, but that's not my problem, that's not my experience, and so it's easier to dismiss. But no one is in that position today to be able to stake that claim. So I'm hoping that that collectively we will continue to keep each other reminded, whether it's in our individual jobs or in our personal lives, of the importance of staying connected, of honoring each other's experiences, and recognizing and really seeing each other on a different level. on a human level.
Great. Well, on that note, let's take a moment to take action. As we all know, we are in the middle of the U.S. Census. The census counts every single person living in the U.S. and is used to determine how $800 billion of federal funding is used for programs like Medicaid and food stamps, how many members of Congress each state gets, et cetera, et cetera. And completing the census is easy and confidential. So there's an easy action that we can all do right now to inspire others to fill it out. Everyone on the call and all the panelists, if you can pull out your phones and text COUNT to 22422. That's 22422. You can fill out the census right now from your phone. You can pledge to text 3 friends to fill it out. Thank you for taking action right now to ensure everyone in Illinois is counted. And I'd like to thank our panelists, Jennifer, Erin, Karina, and Alexa. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email. Thank you for your time. I'm Natalie Moore, signing off to go cover Mayor Lightfoot's 1 p.m. press conference. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you.